times of pandemonium, we turn to David Icke. He has been for decades predicting the tiptoe towards totalitarianism. Now we have pandemic tidal wave totalitarianism. We have been locked down overnight. Disclaimer before we let David get on with it. Unlike Dr. John Campbell, neither of us are medical experts. We are activists with a twist of English wit and entertainment. My belief is in Tolstoy's quotes. The highest flight of wisdom is to admit that we know nothing. We are trying to examine this from every angle. I've had a variety of guests on. One guy said it was from the bats. I got called a deep state shill. Another guy said it was from the virus was leaked from the weapons lab. I was called a crackpot conspiracy theorist. So if you are so dogmatic that you cannot look at somebody else's viewpoint, you shouldn't be on this channel. What David is about to say, some people are going to be dancing in the living room. They're going to love it. Some people are going to be upset and perhaps offended because people are dying. So without any further ado, we've got Bill Gates just did his new TED Talk talking about the whole world needs to be tracked. They've got to have some form of identification, so whether they've been vaccinated or whether they've not been vaccinated or whether they had the virus or not, maybe by ID card or by microchip. We've got Event 201 to discuss. We've got the weapons, the bio lab potential leak or purposeful. And now trillions, I just spoke to Joel Skousen, and he said trillions are now been handed over to the banksters. So did you see the TED Talk by Bill Gates, David? And thanks for coming back on.
Thanks, Shaun. The problem is not the dearth of medical expertise among the population. The problem is the dearth, from what I can see, non-existence of medical expertise advising the government and the governments of the world. Wherever you look, you are seeing the same script playing out in country after country, culture after culture, because it's a global script and it's being played out by the global cult that has no borders that I've been exposing for 30 years. And if there are still people out there, and there will still be loads of them, who, despite how they're being beyond belief scammed over this, quote, virus, if they can't see that the world is heading in a certain direction towards a global, fascistic, Orwellian state, now, after all this, well, there's no hope for them. And, you know, we got into this mess because of what I call press enter people. They're software programs. They have no capacity for free thought. So the data goes in. There's a virus. We're all going to die. And they press enter. And the software program responds to data. So not only does it sit in its house, not going out in the sunshine, not even away from people, it insists that those who know it's a load of bollocks concede their freedom in the same way they have. To the extent that we even have some people snitching on neighbours for going outside for a second time in the day. Now, and the police, of course, have set up hotlines so they can do that.
Oh.
The point is this. I've been saying this for so long. Freedom is so unbelievably tenuous. And it depends not even primarily on the people seeking to delete that freedom. It depends on the idiots who refuse to engage their right to free thought and insist on not only acquiescing to the demands of the few, but insisting that everyone else does that. You see, I've said so many times, a few people cannot control the world without the acquiescence and active participation of the target population. And you can't get a better example than, hey, is that the police? My neighbour's just gone out in the garden for the second time. You know, well, who are you? Oh, I'm a brain-doning freaking idiot. Oh, yes, okay, well, we'll send someone around. I mean, this is what you're dealing with, right? So it's time to call a spade a spade. But there are some good things in this too, because those who do have a capacity for free thought, or at least have been triggered to have one as a result of this, which has got to be a big shock to a lot of people around the world, not just in Britain, America, everywhere. There's a lot of people that are now already and will come off the fence and have to face the fact that the world is not controlled by the forces they thought it was. And it's heading into a very sinister, dark direction of total human subjugation. And it's funny that over the years, the last 30 years, I've been saying this was coming. People have said so often, that's crazy, that could never happen. A few people could never do that. And here we are with at least 3 billion people currently under effective house arrest all over the world. And it's happened in almost days. And it's happened on the behest of a tiny few people. I put a meme on the internet which had a picture of the earth, and it said, ruled by psychopaths, run by idiots. And what we're seeing here is exactly that. You have the psychopaths of the cult that are in the shadows directing all this stuff globally, coordinating it. And then you have the idiots in government and the elected politicians, some of whom are in on it, most of them not a clue. And you have idiots in government administration, medical advisors, and again, you have some in on it, but the vast majority are just idiots. They've just taken the program and keep parroting it. And that combination of a few psychopaths and a lot of idiots has created this situation. I'm talking of idiots, and by the way, I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt for now. It's my holding position. It may not continue to be so. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt that he's an idiot. And that's why he's done what he's done. And I'm talking about a guy called Neil Ferguson, who has been massively responsible for Boris Johnson in the UK cancelling the laxative order and ordering a truck of toilet paper by being told by this Ferguson, who's a biological mathematician, whatever the bloody hell that is, at Imperial College, more later, who came out and said between 250,000 and 500,000 British people could die from this virus. He told the Americans that 2.2 million Americans could die. This man's track record, because what does he use? Computer models. The same computer models that have predicted the ice caps will be gone by now, and people will be swimming in New York because of sea level rise. Those computer models, and now he's tracked back just a little bit to it's probably going to be less than 20,000. And what happened is the 500,000 or 250,000 of 500,000 that got Johnson to lock himself in the lab and to push this lockdown. But the prediction came from an idiot, and I'm being optimistic. And the Imperial College, where he comes from, it has a fantastic record of being solid gold frickin' wrong. It was them computer model that had more than 6 million animals slaughtered that in a reaction to a foot and mouth outbreak in Britain in 2001, destroyed the livelihoods of farmers all over the country, which is something that Imperial College is brilliant at, destroying people's livelihoods, especially, the little people as they would see them. And they had 6 million animals slaughtered that did not have foot and mouth and that had never been in contact with any animal that had foot and mouth. But they said we need a preemptive cull to stop the outbreak. And not with hindsight, you only needed a brain cell working at the time, but with hindsight, it's been accepted that mass cull was folly. We had the government health advisor in 2009 saying that swine flu was going to kill up to 65,000 British people. It actually killed about 475, even if that was the real cause. And I want to get into that in relation to this virus. So this combination of psychopaths pulling the strings and making things happen, getting the momentum going, and complete idiots then responding to it, has brought us where we are now. And Boris Johnson is finished, done. And he's done because he didn't have a backbone to actually look at this with any intelligence and realize that it was absolutely unsustainable to do what they've done. But the psychopaths wanted it done because it's destroyed the world economy. It has destroyed the independent income of vast numbers of people, which has made them dependent on the state, which is something I've said for the best part of 30 years is exactly what this cult wants. Dependency, the Hunger Games society, as I call it. So this pandemic, which isn't, by the way, has ticked every box of what I've said this cult wants all over these decades. And let's look at another common theme. We had this Event 201 6 weeks before this outbreak is said to have started in China. And it was a simulation run by the World Economic Forum, this Davos bunch, the 1%, and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Bill and Melinda Gates, of course, or particularly Bill Gates, who was he's the son of someone who was very much in favor of eugenics. And he, of course, famous for it now, wants to vaccinate the world. This man, just my opinion, should be in frickin' jail, along with a lot of other people in Silicon Bloody Valley, including Elon Musk and stuff like that, people like that. Anyway, so they had this simulation 6 weeks before this broke into the public arena, in which they were simulating, with all these bods all over the place, all the usual suspects, a coronavirus outbreak, pandemic, and how they would react. And their scenario, you can see it on the internet, it was filmed, is exactly what's played out. And among the people taking part in that simulation were the Johns Hopkins University operation, which is now feeding information about the pandemic to the American media, counting cases and stuff, and Johnson & Johnson, Johnson & Johnson have just announced that actually they're flying in conjunction with other groups funded by Bill Gates to find a vaccine. I said at the very start of this, that vaccine already exists. They're just going to wind up the fear and make it compulsory, and then they're going to introduce it. In fact, Denmark already has, even though the thing is not officially found yet. It's going to be compulsory. You know that free country called Denmark. And so then you look at who's driving this globally in terms of the policy and the direction. It's the World Health Organization. The World Health Organization was created by the Rockefeller family. There's significant evidence that actually Bill Gates, if you go back far enough, comes from the same Rockefeller bloodline. He started this Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and said he was inspired to do it by the Rockefeller Foundation. The Rockefeller Foundation that in 2010 ran a document, or published a document with a scenario of a pandemic relating to an influenza strain pandemic. And again, everything they said would happen in that scenario in 2010. The Rockefeller Foundation is exactly what's playing out. I mean, in real detail. So the World Health Organization is directing this. It's headed, just a figurehead, by a guy called Tedros. He's been a member of the Marxist government in Ethiopia. He was health minister, got caught for covering up cholera epidemics 3 times. Nice man, just who you want as head of the World Health Organization. But who's the second biggest funder of the World Health Organization, second only to the United States? The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Everywhere you look, you find this guy. This pandemic and its grotesque consequences should focus the attention of the world on Bill Gates and his activities. Because as I've said in my books, the list of what he funds is simply a wish list of this cult that I've been exposing for all these years. So here we are with this pandemic, which for reasons I can come to isn't, and everything, not only everything that the cult wants, the cult is currently getting, but the reaction of the public, not everybody by no means, but large numbers of the public, is exactly what you could predict. The reason that a few control the world is the acquiescence of the target population to the few. And that's exactly what we're seeing all over the world today.
So are you saying the end game is an acceleration of the program that the deep state had in mind for this totalitarianism? We saw the Patriot Act come in and nothing was the same, and another act will come in, some medical act now, and nothing will be the same after that?
What they do is they get a problem and they make changes justified by the problem. Take 9/11. You mentioned the Patriot Act, and then take this situation. And they introduce extreme measures. Now, when the problem starts to pass, although they're going to keep bringing this one back, I promise you, they roll back some because they have to, but they don't roll back them all. And so the world, in terms of totalitarianism, has moved on. And the big punchline, or there are several actually, but one of the big punchlines, perhaps the most important punchline in all this, is the vaccine. Because what they want to do is, they'll have other waves of this or some other bloody virus. And I want to talk about the nature of this virus because it's all a load of crap. They will wind up the public, not only to, because we're back to what I've just said a few minutes ago, not only to accept the vaccine, but to insist that everyone else who doesn't want it has it, right? That's the way it goes. You know what you can compare this with? Following orders. in Nazi Germany. I was only following orders. So the vaccine is the punchline, because there's going to be stuff in that is going to devastate not only the human body and mutate human DNA in the way that they want to do, as they're transforming everything, but also affect people psychologically. There'll be nanotechnology chips in that and stuff like that. I was told about this by a CIA scientist in 1997. The vaccination programs putting nanochips into people. And at the time he told me all about it, nanotechnology was hardly ever talked about, if at all. So this is where it's going. But also it's this totalitarian fascistic situation we're in, with these laws which have absolutely suspended democracy, they've suspended freedom. The only time you will have seen laws like this in any kind of peacetime is in fascistic and communist countries. I've been saying for years that the blueprint for the world in terms of this Orwellian global state is China. And so they're moving into this Chinese way of running things in the rest of the world. So it's a time when people have got to get their asses off the fence. And I think a lot of people will start to do that, because we have 66 million people in Britain sitting in their frickin' homes with the sun out and going crazy, which is another part of this, the psychological response. And the people telling them that they have to stay there are a fraction, a tiny, tiny fraction of the 66 million. And then play that across the getting on for 8 billion people worldwide and how few are actually imposing these lockdowns all over the world. This is how it's done. And so don't blame everyone else, or anyone else for the fact that you're sitting in your home doing what the few tell you, because you're doing what the few tell you. I'm going out whenever I like. I go out whenever I like, because I'm getting in my car. I'm going out in the countryside. I'm walking, no one around. I'm getting in my car and coming back. Now, I'm a threat to no one, even by the ludicrous criteria that they're telling us, and I want to get into that, about this virus. And so why shouldn't I do that as often as possible? And I've said in a previous video, if the police want to come and see me, or some freaking dark suit with a clipboard, and tell me how I could possibly be a threat to anyone, even by their own ludicrous criteria, by going in a car alone into the countryside, walking alone, getting back in the car alone and coming home and carrying on with my life, then I won't do that more than once. But they won't be able to explain that to me, because it's insane.
Did they try that with your son?
Eh?
Did they try to do that with your son?
Yeah, my son was stopped in Derbyshire, which brings me to Derbyshire Police. I never miss an opportunity. The Derbyshire Police in the English Midlands, for people around the world, are headed by a chief constable called Peter Goodman, right? Not a man I would like to have dinner with, frankly. I think I'd fall asleep through frickin' boredom, what I've seen. But anyway, he's overseeing Derby Police, taking these laws and then playing them out even beyond what the laws say. These Derbyshire Police, they put black dye into a Blue Lagoon tourist spot to destroy it in Derbyshire, to stop people going there, deter visitors. They are putting drones up and filming people walking in the Derby countryside, which is massive and beautiful, alone, or with the person they live with, which is within the law, and they're trying to shame them into stopping it. And even a former Supreme Court member of the Supreme Court in Britain was saying on an interview with the BBC in the last few days that basically Derbyshire Police are a disgrace to policing methods and the way that policing has always been done. In Britain, they are a disgrace. And this Peter Goodman guy who runs the show in Derby ought to be resigning. And the same people stopped my son Jamie when he was walking his dog in the middle of nowhere, and said they were going to take his number and he would be tracked, basically, to see if he went anywhere like that again. And this is what you have. You see, within the police, you have decent, genuine people who want to serve the community. Decent people. There's lots of them. But you have psychopaths and people who haven't got two brain cells to rub together. They actually get into uniform as well. And, my father used to say, it's not that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. It's also that power attracts the corruptible. So you have lots of people who are attracted to get into power professions like the police because they want the power, because they're weak people. They can't be powerful in their own right, so they have to get their power from a uniform. I've said to some of these people before now, you have no power. Take your uniform off. Go and get another job. Where's your power? None. It's in your uniform. The power's not in you. It's in the bleeding wardrobe, mate. And once these people are given laws of the scale that the Johnson government has handed out, disgracefully, he's finished him. Once the background to this virus, which we will get into, and the fact that he's put this lockdown fascistic situation in place, and all of this comes to light, and the economic catastrophe for so many people, it's over. He will have no credibility left whatsoever. And by the way, I think he will probably recover from this so-called COVID-19 that he has. And I say so-called because of what I'm going to say later. And you've got all these celebrities. Oh, Prince Charles has got it now. Oh, yeah, and this person's got it. And this, oh, he's got it. And these famous people. And you go, okay, so how are they? Are they intensive care? Well, no. So what symptoms do they have? Well, they haven't got any, really. Right. And for this, we have created economic Armageddon for the world and dependency of billions on the state, which is exactly what this is all about.
So I've interviewed Dr. Paul Cottrell, and he has said that he believes it was leaked from a bioweapons lab, level 4 bioweapons lab in Wuhan, probably accidentally, but he does not exclude the possibility of it being done on purpose. What are your thoughts?
Bollocks. If you look at the death figures in England, Britain, in the weeks of this virus, and compare them with last year, they're about the same. Look at the emergency hospital visits in the weeks of this virus, compare them with the same last year, and the ratio is slightly less. Look at the death figures in Europe, compare them with last year, and they're in the same range. Yeah? There's a scam being played, and it's gone like this. You say there's a deadly virus going around, and that people are going to die from it, and it's horrible, and it's incredibly rabid, and will pass between people. And you give out the symptoms for it. And what you do then, and of course the medical professions around the world, they just follow the program overwhelmingly. There are exceptions, most of them just do. So they're told that this virus is circulating and it has these symptoms. So what they start to do is diagnose the symptoms as the virus they've been told is circulating, COVID-19, they call it. And then you come into testing. Oh, we got a test now. Well, when you talk to people in the medical profession who are honest and have a mind of their own, they tell you this test is frickin' useless. Coronaviruses, what are they? There's a whole family of coronaviruses, and they're all in our bodies. And they sit there and they cause us no trouble unless we have phenomenal numbers of viruses in the body. And they sit there. And they never reach a level, what they call viral load, which makes us sick. This COVID-19 test, they say, tests positive for other coronaviruses. And we all kind of have them at some level. So there is not a test. This is, check the facts out and you'll see it's true. There's not a test specific to COVID-19, as they call it. So we don't know how many cases there are of false positives, because the tester said yes when it's testing yes for other coronaviruses. And the Library of Medicine in the United States published a study on its website detailing the fantastic number of false positives that there are with this so-called COVID-19. And I want to read something to you here. Of course, the thing that's terrified people in the West more than anything are the alleged cases and deaths in Italy. Well, this is Professor Walter Ricciardi, scientific advisor to Italy's Minister of Health. Direct quote: "The way in which we code deaths in our country is very generous in the sense that all the people who die in hospitals with coronavirus are deemed to be dying of a coronavirus. On re-evaluation by the National Institute of Health, only 12% of death certificates have shown a direct causality from coronavirus." Not necessarily even this COVID-19, by the way. While 88% of patients who have died have at least one pre-morbidity, many had 2 or 3. Another statistic from the equivalent of the British National Health Service, the Italian National Health Service. 99% of those who have been registered to have died from COVID-19, which they can't frickin' test for, have had 1, 2, 3 or more other health problems. You know what they're doing, Shaun? I mean, I've spent weeks doing nothing but research this, and I've not pulled it out the ether. This is coming from medical professionals with a mind of their own. They are testing late stage cancer patients for coronavirus, and if they test positive, coronavirus is going on the death certificate. And another thing, this PCR test, which is supposed to test for COVID-19, cannot ascertain the amount of virus present in that person's body. And it's the amount of virus that decides if it makes you sick or not. As one medical professional I read about and saw an interview with said, you need massive amounts of virus to make you sick. Just because you test positive for a virus. I mean, we would test positive for endless bloody viruses, not least coronaviruses. But they don't trouble us. But you do the test and you've got coronavirus, even in just minute amounts to register on the test, you are a coronavirus case. You are a COVID-19 case. And if you die, you are a COVID-19 death. And here's another quote from the Italian civil protection chief, Angelo Borelli, who said it is credible to estimate that there are 10 positive cases for every one officially reported. And if that's true, then the mortality rate, even for this alleged COVID-19, in Italy plummets immediately from 10% to 1%, which is about what you get in with flu. And that's an important point. This head of the World Health Organization, this Bill Gates puppet, Tedros, he announces that the death rate something like 3% or more. But you need two numbers to assess the death rate. You need the number of people who've died, but you need to know they've died of the virus you're claiming. And of course, with this test, you can't do that. And you certainly can't do it with just going on symptoms, because the symptoms match many other things. What do they keep saying about COVID-19? It's flu-like symptoms. Well, maybe it's the bloody flu then. In 2017, 2018, 45 million people got the flu in America alone, and between 60 and 80,000 people died. We didn't shut down the world economy, we didn't shut down the American economy. So what they're doing, and this is why the death rate's not gone up, for all causes, is they're taking ill people and people who have similar symptoms, and they're redesignating them with COVID-19, which is a communicatable disease. In other words, you have to tell the governments that you've found it, or alleged to have found it, and thus it all goes on the figures. And so in Lombardy, where just like China and Wuhan, the air quality that people are breathing in all their lives is notoriously horrific, so their lungs are going to be in a terrible state anyway. And maybe for that reason, or certainly partly for that reason, Lombardy is far and away the area of Italy every year where most people die. The last figures I saw is that 99,000, nearly 100,000 people died of all causes in Lombardy. And the next Italian region down from that, Lazio, was 57,000. So you have all these people in Lombardy with lung disease, breathing in shite all their lives, and respiratory problems, flu. And what they're doing is they're redesignating them COVID-19. And this is where the figures are coming from. And this is where the death rates and the death numbers are coming from. We have no idea what the death rate is. We have no idea how many people have genuinely died. Hell of a lot less than they say, clearly, from what I've said already. And by the incessant hysteria from the cult-owned media, you created this fear of a deadly virus. Well, it's clearly not a deadly virus, because it's only affecting in any number old people with compromised immune systems and people with other illnesses, giving them compromised, challenged immune systems. It's a scam. Wake up, people. The bigger the lie, the more they will believe it. And that's exactly what's going on.
So I'm interested in how this scam came into play. Is it a case of the deep state hijacked a crisis under the old adage, never let the crisis go to waste? Or did something legitimately come out of China or somewhere else?
It's all planned. It's all planned. It's been all planned from the start. This has been planned to come for a long time. I mean, I've quoted insiders of this cult going back to 1969, who've talked about the fact that they're injecting diseases into people. And I want to come to that. Another area that people need to look at is that I've read a lot in the last little while and watched interviews and presentations by people who have worked in this whole viral virus area. And they say something very interesting. They say that viruses cannot be transmitted between animals and people and people because a virus is a secretion from the human cells. And these are secreted when the human cell is poisoned or is so full of cumulative toxicity that it seeks to eject the toxicity from the cell, and that is what we call a virus. The virus needs, we're not talking about, other versions of how people get ill, which can be passed on. I'm talking about viruses. The virus needs a body to exist. And therefore, once it gets outside the body, but then again, it's a cellular thing anyway, it's over. So the idea that you can catch a virus from money or shaking hands is absolute bollocks. And the whole story is based on a ridiculous fantasy. And so the virus comes from poisoned cells. And it's interesting. Every time, I've got a quote here from somebody who's studied this for a very, very long time. And I'm talking about electromagnetic fields, if I can find it. Anyway, if I can't, I can remember it. I actually...
While you're looking for that, I'll just say that...
I have found it. Okay. This is a guy called Arthur Furstenberg, author of a book called The Invisible Rainbow, A History of Electricity and Life. And this is a study of the effect of different increases in electromagnetic fields and their impact upon the human health. And he said this in 2018, before this virus, obviously, and before 5G. Every time we have dramatically changed the properties of the Earth's magnetic field by an increase in technologically generated radiation, it has had dramatic effects on health down here on Earth. He connects it to Spanish flu and Asian flu and Hong Kong flu, etc., etc. And of course, in the immediate run-up to this so-called virus breaking out, we had 5G introduced, and Wuhan was the first 5G smart city in China. And what these electromagnetic fields do is they poison cells. And 5G, of course, is a massive upgrade on this. They poison cells. And when you poison cells, they secrete viruses. And another point, by the way, which also links into this Spanish flu that killed so many people in 1918, in 1918, as the troops were coming back home from the war, First World War, they were given massive numbers of vaccines, as one doctor was quoted as saying, with no rules at all about them. So in this same period, you had troops being given these vaccines, and I'll come to that in relation to viruses in a second. And you had this upgrade of electromagnetic effects through radar. Now they call it Spanish flu, but where did it start? It started in military bases in America, and then went to other military bases. And there were groups, because the world was not connected like it is now in terms of travel. There were different groups in different areas that had no contact with the other groups, but they all got this Spanish flu at the same time. And the key is this upgrade of radar, i.e. the effect of electromagnetic fields, which the body had never had before and had to sort itself out and come to terms with it, and this mass vaccination of troops. Now, these people that say you can't pass a virus on because it's a phenomenon of the cellular structure actually basically detoxifying itself, they say there is one way you can catch it: vaccinations. If you can inject into the body, not catching it from outside, you see, into the body, you can inject animal tissue or human tissue carrying viral problems, then you can inject it and you can pass it on that way. And that's exactly what people I've quoted in my books over the years, going back, like I say, to 1969, have said was coming. They were going to inject diseases in vaccination programs. Now, what the fricking hell is going to be in this one that they want to sell worldwide en masse for this coronavirus that they're claiming? Now, there may be a little tweak of the coronavirus family, so you've got this one, or there may not. Doesn't really matter, because as long as people believe that it exists, it might not. As long as people believe it, you got them doing exactly what you want. And so this is the overwhelming foundation. Whether there is a tweak called COVID-19 or not, the great majority of these death figures and case figures ain't for that. They are for other coronavirus, including the common cold, which is coronavirus. And they are putting on death certificates, coronavirus, COVID-19, when people are actually dying of something else. That's how it's being played.
So in our podcast, Conspiracy Crimes of the Illuminati Part 2, you talked extensively about AI, the end game there. How has that been affected now by COVID-19?
Well, massively. First of all, I've tried to point out a few times since this started, keep your eyes open, because whenever there is a massive focus on one thing, loads of other things are going on, which you don't see because you're focused on the one thing. This is a wonderful opportunity from that point of view. And what they're doing, while everyone's locked away, is they're massively playing out more 5G. Another 21 towns, cities in Britain during this virus hysteria. Elon Musk, who should be in jail for crimes against humanity for what he's doing to humans, he's putting up more and more and more satellites beaming 5G at the Earth. He's just got permission in the middle of this virus scare for 1 million antenna on the ground to interact with the 5G satellites. They will be out there, and I bet they won't be 6 feet apart either, putting up more and more 5G on lampposts and whatever, all over the place while this is going on. So, the idea that we have to destroy the world economy and the financial independence of literally billions to protect old people is just so ludicrous and insulting, not least to old people. They couldn't care less about old people. They let old people die every winter of the bloody cold, where they're choosing between being warm or being hungry. They don't care about old people. They want rid of them. This is why I've seen enough evidence, Shaun, in the last week or so, coming from nurses and loved ones, that there is a process going on in British hospitals of pressurizing old people to sign do not resuscitate forms. So if they have a big problem, they could be allowed to die. You know what they'll put on their death certificate? COVID-19. This is the thing. One of the greatest human diseases, psychological diseases, is naivety. And I do understand it to a certain extent. If you're living your life and with your family and your workmates, you probably will never experience many psychopaths. Most of them are in hiding anyway, so you won't notice them. You certainly will not have experienced the scale of super extreme psychopath that relates to this cult. And so naively, you think that people would not do this to vast numbers of people. They wouldn't destroy their lives and their livelihoods. They wouldn't do that, but they would, and they get off on it. It's a sexual high to them. And so the idea that they wouldn't do that, as let these people get away with it decade after decade, even century after century, when they're doing it all the time. These people are psychological psychopaths and deeply mentally and emotionally sick. They have no empathy. They have no emotional consequence for whatever they do. And therefore, they are quite happy, indeed, sexually stimulated by doing anything, no matter how extreme, they need to do to take control of everybody. And we've seen in the last few days, couple of weeks maybe, just how easy that is when humanity gives its right to free thought away and its right to freedom away and gives away its self-respect. Hey, all those people sitting around in their homes going crazy. Look in the mirror. Do you see self-respect coming back? You're being put through hell. Your economic livelihood has been destroyed by a handful of people. Some of them idiots, some of them psychopaths. Do you feel self-respect? Accepting that? We've got to get that back. Self-respect. Which is why I say, if the police want to come and see me and say, if you go out too many times or whatever, more than once, we'll fine you. I'll say, well, I ain't going to pay it. Or put you in jail. All right, I'm not bothered. Because what I care about is not what you prats do. I care about my self-respect. And my self-respect will not allow these psychopaths and clowns, tiny few by comparison, to impose their will on my life. I won't have it.
So I've read most of your books, and in the early books, I remember you saying the hope for humanity was an elevation of consciousness.
Yeah.
Has COVID-19 brought the axe down on that? And also you said they get enough on this sexually. Does that mean there's a satanic component?
Oh, it's all satanic. They are satanic. That's where their psychopathy and lack of empathy really comes from. But there's some good things here, Shaun. Um, I've talked in this chat about the software programs, but there's vast amounts of people who are capable of seeing it for themselves. And this is a catalyst. It's a massive catalyst, what is happening now. Because anyone that goes forward dismissing what is really going on is probably a lifelong software program. But it's going to get vast numbers of people off the fence. It already has. And they are starting to look, first of all, seeing what a nonsense it is, because those kind of people don't get in the mainstream media, do they? The system narrative people get there, like the disgraceful excuse for journalism called the BBC. But a lot of people have sussed it, and they're never going to be the same again, mate. They're never going to be the same again. I know from long past that once you see it, there ain't no going back. Once you see it, the door clicks behind you. And I'll tell you something else. This cult, with this virus scam, has also entered the room and heard the door click behind it. Because it can't hide anymore, because it's shown itself. And thus, the game is in a position where from here, yes, it can be very dangerous because they want to push this on. But from here, the game can also change in a way that the cult never envisaged.
With every scam, there's a financial incentive. Is there a land grab going on right now in the business community whereby the bigger are crushing the smaller? I watch the stock market. I've seen companies' shares get crushed, but Amazon is still remaining quite high, as if they're, profiting from all the deliveries right now, people stuck at home.
Well, I could go on several angles from that. First of all, I've been saying all these years that the idea in this Hunger Games society, with a few controlling everyone else and a police military state holding that status quo, there will be no small business or medium-sized business. There'll just be gigantic global corporations controlling everything. Now, who are the biggest losers worldwide in what's happened? Small business, medium business, people that can't, even some big business that's not necessarily created to the cult, or the cult doesn't mind losing it anyway, for a bigger picture, a bigger goal. And so that's all absolutely part of that. And they can push the stock market up whenever they like. But there's an area here that I think needs addressing, because I've not seen it talked about very much. And that's China. I've been saying over the years that if you want to know what the West is planned to be like tomorrow, then look at China today. China is the global model. The way China is run and controlled, that's the global model for the global state, the technocracy, where there is no even elected politicians. There's only technocrats and bureaucrats and scientists and engineers and stuff running the system, which will be an AI-controlled system. And look at China. First of all, both Event 201 and this Rockefeller scenario I talked about in Rockefeller Foundation scenario in 2010, they both said that China's handling of the virus pandemic would be praised because it was effective. And of course, what you have in the response of the Chinese government is phenomenal draconian actions and in positions. And these said that, quoting the Rockefeller one now, that that didn't happen in the West to start with, but then gradually the West took the same line as China. So it's not that China as a regime, certainly not Chinese people who are just as oppressed as everyone else, in fact more so, that is supposed to be the world tomorrow. It's the Chinese model, the Chinese methods of control, which is overwhelmingly through AI now, because it's a technocracy. It's just a Chinese version of what the world's meant to be. And so China is meant to get stronger and stronger. And so let's just go through this sequence. You have a virus breaking out in Wuhan. Well, maybe, maybe not. Let's say it did. And you have the reaction to it. Massively draconian, fascistic measures. And apparently there's vast numbers of people and it's all crazy and oh my God, this all built up the fear. Oh, well, we could get it tomorrow. And then suddenly, woo! Now China says, oh, no, our case is virtually none. We're getting back together now. So where it's supposed to have started, we're now told it's gone. And so you can see the psychological preparation. Oh, that's how you have to deal with it, because look how China dealt with it, and they were successful. But also it means the Chinese economy is starting to pick up again. And in the West are vast numbers of Western companies that are available for cents on the dollar. And I have no fear. The Chinese government will be buying them up, legions of them, under different fronts and proxies. And China will own a vastly greater amount of the world when this is over than they did when it started. And we're already getting, because of this expansion of China, thus the expansion of the Chinese model, we're already getting a Chinese version of Israel. Israel has this network, massive global network, especially in the West, which uses anti-Semitism to stop legitimate criticism of what it's doing and exposure of what it's doing. And so you criticize Israel, you're anti-Semitic. That's now starting to happen with the Chinese and China in general. In America, the basketball league, etc., so many other things, Hollywood, are so dependent for vast amounts of their income on the Chinese audience, because it's so vast, that they start doing China's bidding. And so someone in the basketball arena a few months ago now came out and criticized China for the tyrannical reaction to the Hong Kong protests, and all hell broke loose. Apologies all around. We mustn't criticize China. So it's this increasing financial influence and control that's coming out of China that's now making China a no-go area for criticism. I mean, for instance, the idea that CO2, which is the gas of life, carbon dioxide, is a threat to the planet is so ridiculous. I don't know how people that claim that remember to breathe every few seconds, to be honest, because I see no evidence of the brain power necessary when you believe that the gas of life is a dangerous pollutant. But let's take it that it is. By far the biggest polluter in the world, therefore, producing carbon dioxide technologically, is China. Where's Greta Thunberg criticizing China? Where are these wokes of the climate cult criticizing China? Nowhere. Criticize the West. And what is happening, again, same story, is that the West's economy is being dismantled in the name of fighting climate change and reducing carbon dioxide, the gas of life. But China is going on with no problem. So it has a massive advantage on that level alone against the West. And it's also worth mentioning, you look at what the climate cult, people like Prince Charles, are demanding to save the world, and it's a brand new economic system to replace the present one. I've been writing for 30 years that one of the key things that this cult wants is to replace the current economic system with one based on the cashless society. Of course, the cash is being demonized over this virus, and people are, I went to London about 10 days ago, and even in small places where they were cash places, always have been. Oh no, we're not taking cash, you'll have to use a card. Preferably without punching the numbers in. So you think you can get the virus from the yeah, you can't. And so now I saw a guy from the company that runs all the ATMs saying that by the end of the summer the cash will basically be finished. Well, that's exactly what I've been writing about since what? About 1992. I started talking about the cashless society was in the plan. And so what they want with this virus scam is to destroy the world economy, to create massive dependency on government for vast numbers of people. I'll come to why that is in a second. But one reason why it is because then they can say that the world economic system is finished, it's irreparable, so we need to have a new one. And the new one will be their cashless, centralized AI-controlled economic system of the Hunger Games society. And you will have noticed that since this began, this virus nonsense, that people have been saying, well, how are the people going to live? It's a bloody good question. So we've started with these so-called relief packages of vast amounts of money. I've just passed one in America of $2 trillion. And of course, the great vast majority of that is going to go to big corporations. The Anti-Defamation League, which is a censorship operation, absolutely disgusting, appalling operation organization, which is part of this Israel ultra-Zionist network, is demanding bailout money from the American government. They have no shame. They have no shame because the psychopaths have no shame. And so it's mostly going to them. But some will filter down, next to nothing. This is starting to bring about what I've been saying again is the plan. And that's to, as first of all, AI takes more and more jobs until it takes virtually all of them. And with all these jobs disappearing in a flash because of this virus situation, they're talking about a guaranteed income from the government. And the guaranteed income will be tiny, and it will be barely survivable, and it will come with strings. If you don't want to take the strings and not take the guaranteed pittance, then the government say, well, okay, well, where else are you going to earn a living? There's no jobs destroyed by that virus and AI. And we go back to China. China runs something called a social credit system, whereby people are tracked in real time by millions of face recognition cameras in the cities now. Can't go anywhere without being tracked in real time, and you can be found in minutes. I've seen it done in documentaries. And when you behave, all tracked by AI, the way the government wants in China, you get social credits. When you behave in ways they don't want you to behave, your credits are taken away. And when you get to a certain point in credits taken away, consequences kick in. As I said in my last book, millions of Chinese people, millions and millions of Chinese people have been banned from flying and even going on trains because their social credit score has got too low. And something like that will be brought in with this guaranteed income. You get it if you do this. This is all part of the Chinese model being played out globally. So creating in a flash this mass dependency and loss of independent livelihood pushes that whole thing forward in a gigantic leap. And that's another reason it's being done.
So we've gone over an hour, David. You've been generous with your time as usual. I thank you. Is there anything you would like to say in conclusion to the people watching this?
Well, yeah. How long are we going to sit here accepting this crap? You know, there's already stories coming out of Italy, which has been locked down nationally since March the 9th, of violence breaking out. People are being subjected to psychological torture, and your kids are being subjected to psychological torture. And every day, oh, the cases have gone up. Well, of course they have. If they're testing for coronavirus, they're going to get loads more cases because we've invariably got them. And more people have died, yes, but of what? Why haven't the death figures as a whole gone up? And we're sitting here, well, I'm bloody not, when we could go out as many times as we like without going near anyone that we don't live with. But we can get out. But we don't. Because tiny few people say we shouldn't. How long are you going to take it, people? Because how long you're going to take it will decide how long you take it. A few cannot control the many without the acquiescence of the many. Time it stopped.
Are the people staying in on the Isle of Wight?
Oh, what? I drive around the Isle of Wight. Nobody there. Nobody there. I went to London even before the big lockdown came in. Bloody empty. I got in a cab. I went for an interview at a place called London Real. And I got in the cab at Waterloo Station. Oh dear, the line. Not of people, of cabs. No line of people. I was the only one. And I got in the cab and he said he'd waited 4 hours in that line to get the front, to get a fare. How are those people going to survive that? But I tell you what, Uber will survive it out of Silicon Valley, as they wish to remove black cabs altogether. Oh, wake up, people. People who are actually watching this and bothering to watch this will already have moved in that direction to a large extent or some extent. But those who still, after all this, oh, well, the government says, who gives a shit? Bunch of idiots run by psychopaths. You're listening to them for? It's time to take our power back before it's all gone. Great opportunity, this. Great opportunity. The Chinese, funnily enough, have a saying about something being danger and opportunity. Well, it's a danger, but it's also an opportunity. This can be the start of the end of the control of humanity. But humanity has to make that decision.
So if you are at home and you've got time on your hands, in the description box below this video are links to all of David's books, links to his YouTube channel. You can click over there. There's hours and hours of content you can watch for free, and I've read most of David's books. I highly recommend them. Actually, his 9/11 book, Alice in Wonderland, was my wake-up call to how the world really works. Also in the description box are links to the other stuff popular on the channel right now: coronavirus playlist, true crime, Epstein stuff still going on. And huge thank you to all the people who donated on PayPal, Patreon, Just Giving. Those links are down there as well. We look forward to reading all of your questions and comments below. And again, David, thank you so much for your time. All the best on the Isle of Wight.
Thanks, mate. Can I just say one final thing?
Yep.
One bit of advice. Read the laws that were brought in this lockdown, and you'll find that the police, not least Derbyshire police, but others too, are imposing restrictions that are not in those laws. What's happening is this: they've passed the laws, and then the government says, we recommend. That's not a frickin' law, that's a recommendation. And the police are imposing the recommendation as if it's the law. So many reasons that people think it's against the law to do this. It's not. But the police are imposing the recommendations that are not law. I'm looking forward to the first policeman that tries to stop me on that basis. Be a great conversation.
And these people are snitching on the neighbours. You ought to be ashamed of yourselves.
100%. But then again, the software program in those people is so all-encompassing. They would not have the capacity for self-awareness to realize that.
All right then, David. Thank you very much for your time. We'll be watching your videos and seeing how this progresses. Cheers.
Cheers, mate.
London.
All the best.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.